What's up, everybody? It's Brandon. It's time for a 15-minute game here on the ICC. What should I play here? Let's play e6. Maybe we'll get some kind of Bogo Indian?
Check.
Sure, I'll play the Bogo Indian. I don't really know these lines that well, but the Queen's Indian I think is maybe a little bit passive. There's a couple moves here for black. There's Queen to e7. There's pawn to a5. The idea being if the bishop pawn takes, then the pawn on b4 is strong because it's controlling the c3 square. This is actually a 15-5 game. I'm going to play queen to e7. My opponent's name is Lilo. Okay, so
Check.
he's provoking me to play that move. And I think that I can maybe play. Maybe I can play a5 here to stop any expansion with b4. But no, I think I'll play the standard d6 stuff. Having exchanged dark square bishops, I just want to put all my pawns on dark squares. Knight d7, castle. If he plays e4, well, he can't play e4 yet. But, knight c3, e4, and then I'll play e5. Just setting up the dark square pawn chain. And, yeah, I think I should just castle here. I don't see any reason why not to. And he'll probably play e4. And what I'll do on that is respond with e5. So stopping him from pushing and gaining space in the center with e5. I think a3 may have been a little bit of a waste of time because I plan to take that bishop at some point anyway. But on the other hand, it does prepare b4, sort of expanding on the queen side. So let's see some of this guy's other ratings. He doesn't play a lot of 5-minute. His 15-minute rating is 1833, so he's not a bad player. I'm obviously the favorite based on rating, but let's see what he does here. So probably he should play, e4 or e3. I guess maybe g3 is a possibility, but I don't really know for sure. If you can play, if you want to play with the bishop on g2 in these positions. I suppose it's possible he's thinking about castling queenside, but that looks really dangerous. Queenside seems like I could probably open the queenside up pretty quickly with something, typical stuff like c5 and then b5 with a little bit of preparation, even as a pawn sacrifice. So like castle queenside, c5, d5, e5, something like that. And then prepare for a6 and b5, takes, knight takes. That just opens up a lot of, or takes, bishop takes, opens up a lot of squares for my pieces. The b file would be open, the a file would be open in that case. So hopefully I'm not disconnected here. No, I'm still connected. Let's try him. It says he's still connected, so I guess he's thinking about what to do in this position. I mean, this doesn't seem like the kind of position you really need to think that much about. e4 seems to be a pretty standard move here. And then after e5, he can choose to close the center up and get some space advantage by playing d5. He could exchange, but I don't think that would be particularly beneficial. So, yeah, he's just sort of letting his clock run here. Not sure what else I can say about this position. That's a strange move. Queen to g4, or queen to g5. What is the idea of queen to g5? I don't know, but I think I can just at least play this with the tempo, so I get a flight square for my king, and at least get this tempo here. yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason not to play this move e5. And if he plays d5, then I can probably play something like even bishop to f5, and that position looks really nice for me. He hasn't castled. If he does castle queenside, which I think would be crazy, but if he does, my bishop on f5 would have a very nice square. So, yeah, I'm putting pressure on his center here. I don't think he wants to let me take his pawn on d4. So he may want to either push d5 or play e2, e3. To try to maintain a pawn on d4. So, alright, let's see. Well, I guess he is pinning my knight, with the queen being on g5. This I don't think is particularly bad for me. Just giving up his control in the center there. He can't play. Yeah, he couldn't play knight d5 there just because knight takes d5 and my queen is protected. So, alright, he goes with e3. And now I think there's probably no reason why I shouldn't continue with my plan and just play bishop to f5, developing my last piece. Well, actually I have the knight still, so knight to either d7 or c6 is probably fine. And so I'm preventing his bishop from being developed to d3, so he is going to have to play bishop d2 or something. I'm also taking away, yeah, bishop e2. And I don't know if I should play knight d7 or knight to c6 here. If I play knight to c6, he may actually be able to play knight to d5 because when I take and he takes with the pawn, queen takes queen, and then my knight on c6 is attacked. So maybe I'll just play knight d7 here. Alright, so I think this position is roughly equal, probably. I don't think I have any particular disadvantages, but maybe a little bit of extra space for me. It might be slightly better for me. But, so probably I should just stick a rook on the d file. Which rook? I don't know, but I'll go with the a rook so that I can maybe put the f rook on the e8 square at some point. And in terms of long-term plan, yeah, probably I should stick my knight on c5. Knight c5, and then it's looking at some of the weak light squares in his position, like e4 and d3 and b3. He's got some light squares here on his queen side. They're a little weak, so trading rooks I don't mind. Just giving me control of the d file would be fine. We can even trade all the rooks on the d file. That's perfectly fine. But if he does, absolutely nothing, I might be able to play a move like knight to d3, knight to b3. Knight to d3 would be nice if he. Well, maybe I don't want to give up the bishop. Maybe I don't want to trade the light square bishop off. But so say he plays something like b4 in this position. I could play knight to d3. I could play knight to b3. Actually, knight to d3 might not work because he could play e4. And then that would probably win a piece, so probably I'll play knight to e4 in that case. If he plays b4, I'll probably play knight to e4. So, I mean, this position is rather symmetrical and probably equal. This is how I would evaluate it. Knight into d5. Huh? So I can take this knight and exchange a whole bunch of pieces here. He can't take my queen because, yeah. Do I trade queens here or do I do something else? Probably trade queens. I don't mind getting pieces off the board. And maybe I can take on d5. If I take on d5 and play bishop e4, rook c1, I don't know. Take on d5, play knight b3 maybe? And then he'll play rook to d1. And bishop c2. Could be interesting. Let's see what happens here. Probably he's going to put his rook on e1. I mean on d1. That seems to be the logical square to me. Just, defending the d pawn. But then maybe I can play bishop to c2. And then he has to get off of the d file. So he'll have no squares on the d file. So maybe he can't play d1. So rook d1, bishop c2 could be interesting. Rook e1, yeah. I do have to remember my bishop is hanging. So actually, maybe it would be convenient for me just to play bishop to c2 anyway, defending the knight and stopping a rook from coming onto the d file. But maybe he can play bishop to d1, and I can't really move the bishop because that would hang the knight. So yeah, bishop d1 seems like a good move here, forcing me to take on d1. And yeah, I mean, maybe this position is not so great for me, but it's not. I obviously don't have any problems, but I don't think I have any particular advantage either. But he didn't choose to play as white. He didn't choose to play anything particularly aggressive. So not much you can do if your opponent does that. Okay. I thought bishop to d1 was a little better there, but you can get some pressure on the pawn this way. Maybe his idea is to take, and then when I take, he can just play e4. And then safeguard his pawns that way. That makes sense. So this is probably fine for him also. So let's see what he comes up with here. I'd like to be able to play f5 without losing the pawn, but f5 would be something to prevent him from playing e4 and keep pressure on the pawn. But I don't know. I'm not really going to be able to do that unless I play something like g6 and then f5. But as long as his bishop's on that diagonal, pointing at my king, I'm not going to be able to really pull that off. So. On the other hand, he is taking a lot of time here. Yeah, so he went for this plan, like I mentioned before. Yeah, maybe the only way for me to try for any activity here is to play c6 and give up the pawn structure, but try to argue that my rook on the d file, my control of the d file will give me some play. If I'm going to go for a win, probably I have to do something like that. c6, pawn takes, rook to d1. Maybe I can play bishop to a5 there, or bishop to a4 there. Let's see. I have to attack this structure in one way or the other. So if I'm going to get any activity at all in this position, I have to do this at some point. So I think he really has no choice but to take here, right? There's nothing else. So knight to f5. It's interesting. Yeah, maybe he wants to play knight to e7 check and pick up the pawn that way. I thought maybe rook to c1 was a little bit better, but can I go on to the 7th? I don't know. Maybe I just move out of the way. Maybe I just move the pawn out of the way. Yeah, let's try this. So I'm going to push the pawn. If he plays check, then I'll move them. And the idea is I can push the pawn to c4 here. Like if he plays rook c1, then I'll just play c4. So the bishop is protecting the pawn. And I still have control of the d file. So if he plays the knight check, then king h7 probably is fine. Knight check, king h7, knight to c6. Check. Probably just rook d2, penetrating onto the 7th rank. He'll be attacking. It can take the a pawn, but then I'll take the b pawn. So, Oh, he's also attacking the b pawn though. If he does that, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, rook d2. He takes the a pawn. Then I take the b pawn. If he takes the e pawn, then I probably also take the b pawn. So I have the more active rook. He has, he can win a couple of pawns. This is just giving me a pawn, isn't it? Am I missing something here? Maybe he just wants to go into the rook ending? Or maybe his idea is to play rook to d1 and pin my bishop after I take the knight. But then rook b8 and rook takes b2, check. He'll have to do something about his back rank. So it's probably nothing, but I'm expecting him to play rook d1 here, just to pin the bishop. This is just a pawn if he takes the pawn, if he takes the knight, the bishop right away. But I'm pretty sure his plan was to play rook d1 here. And then my response will be rook b8. But then he takes with the pawn, rook takes b2, d6. Could be dangerous. But probably I can put my rook on d7 and then work the king over and collect the pawn if he does something like that. Probably this position should be a draw at this point. A lot of materials come off the board here. My structure is a little bit weak. We're coming down to a rook-only endgame with equal number of pawns. It's usually things like that are a draw. Yeah. So he comes with this rook move. That was the idea. And now, well, if I take, plays d6. Yeah, I'll probably just come back with the rook to b8 and then d8 and d7, like I said before. Yeah. So I'm up a pawn, but he does have this strong pass pawn. What I'm hoping here is that I can get the rook to d8 and then bring the king in via g6, f6, and e6 to round this pawn up. So looks like I should be able to do that. So I don't see why not. I don't see why I shouldn't try it anyway. I don't think this knight d5 was a particularly. He's going to have to. I think he probably has to let the pawn go at some point. Yeah, king. I mean, I don't see why I can't just play king f6 here, defending this pawn. Yeah, I mean that was his only real option. Would be just to let the pawn go and try to get some activity with his rook. And so I'm up a pawn in this rook endgame, but that's probably not really enough to win unless he makes some egregious mistakes. I think I'm guaranteed at least a draw here. I don't see how I couldn't be guaranteed a draw. So let's see what happens. I mean, if anything, if I wanted to guarantee a draw here, I could just move my king around back and forth. And if he plays, yeah, if he plays king e5, king e4, I think I'll play f5. Probably I should play f5 to back his king off. Really? Yeah, I mean, I guess the more pawns that come off the board, the better for him, probably. I mean, there's not a whole lot for me to do here other than sort of wait around and try to strengthen my position. Try to control some squares. Try to keep his rook. I was trying to keep his rook off of the f5 and g5 squares there. I don't really have much of a plan for improvement. Maybe I can try to move the king over to b6 or something. Attack the rook. Try to do something, but obviously I would like to trade rooks in this position because I think that's probably a winning king and pawn endgame. But I don't anticipate him giving me the opportunity to trade rooks. So I'm in no danger of losing this position unless I do something horrifically stupid. But I'm not. I don't think it's winning either. With best play, I think if we were to turn on a computer here, the computer would say that this is a draw. But whatever. I'm just gonna move along with my plan here. I'm not sure what he's attempting to accomplish with moving the kingside pawns there, except just to trade off as many pawns as possible. Try to get it down to only a one pawn advantage for me, which is logical. And probably he should play rook to d5 here. I don't know if there's a better square for his rook. And then maybe I'll play. I don't really want to close. If I'm going to retain winning chances, I don't really want to play g6, g5, g6 check, because I don't want my pawns to get blocked up. I don't want, you know, if I play g5, g6, he's got this target on f6. I'd like to encourage him. I lose pawn mobility is what I'm trying to say if I play g7, g6, g5 check. So he's actually spending a lot of time here in this position. He's down to 2 minutes and 10 seconds here. I guess I really haven't spent a ton of time in the position. I was thinking for a second there about rook to e6, but that would of course be losing because after trading rooks, he just takes the g6 pawn and queens. So I can't do that. I mean, should I play something like a5, just push the pawn, or rook to e4? It's tough to know what to do in these positions. I'll just make a waiting move and see what he chooses to do here. Okay. So that I don't mind so much because at least my pawns are staying mobile. You know, as a unit, they have mobility potential down the road. If he were to somehow like give away the rook or force a rook trade, if I could somehow force a rook trade, that would be nice. But in the meantime, you know, I'm pretty solid. All of my pawns are protected. You might try something like rook to e8 to h8. That could be an idea. I mean, still, I could never lose a position like this. Worst case scenario would be that I push the pawn to g5 and just keep my rook on the 6th rank. All pawns are protected and nothing's happening. But I don't think I would have any winning chances there. I mean, at this rate, I'm gonna just win the game because he's not making any moves. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to suggest to him other than staying put either. But you know, let's harass him a little bit. Why not? He has to go somewhere that maintains the protection of the pawn here. So king to f3 probably. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go for a win. I could play h5, rook to e6 check, king to b5, rook takes g6, pawn g6 check, rook takes, king takes, king here. That's probably a winning king and pawn in game if we go down that road. So but otherwise I'm just getting another passed pawn for him to deal with. And I'm counting on him only having, I mean, this is with a 5-second increment, but he only has 46 seconds left, so. He needs to not spend so much time on his moves here. Okay, so I have this passed pawn, and that's sort of what I was referring to earlier in the sense that I wanted to, well, this just gives me a chance to push this pawn with check. I'm not sure about that idea. And now I'm going to try to use my king here. Get my king onto a5, a4. And maybe maybe this is actually pretty good for me. King a4. But then, yeah, I mean, if he just doesn't move his rook off of the third rank, you know, how am I going to make progress? I admit I don't know. Probably, yeah, exactly. Just keep the rook on the third rank, and what's there for me to do, right? But obviously, I'm just going to win this game on time anyway. Yeah, try king c5. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know if there's a way for me to make inroads here. I'll try. I'm going to try to play king to here. King to c5, rook to f. I don't know if that works for me. King c4, rook to f6. Yeah, I guess I can just play a5 there. But he's about to run out of time. Oh. Check takes the pawn. Here. Rook check. My idea is to play... Oh. Well, he ran out of time. My idea was to play check and king here, and then try to swing the rook in on here. At which point, I'll take the rook, he takes my rook, I take his with the king, and then his king takes my h4 pawn, and then the a pawn runs home. Maybe that's a win. Certainly at least a draw, but looks like a win. Alright, let's take a look at this game from the beginning here. This wasn't a particularly interesting game, but let's see if I can start it from the beginning. I'll have to examine it. I'm going to pause the video for a second and then start up the examination mode. Okay, so I'm back here and I have the game under examination mode. Let's see if I can flip the board here. Let's flip the board. So
check.
So this was a Bogo Indian, and this part of the game isn't particularly interesting. I think this is probably just even. I don't think there's really anything to speak of going on here. Lots of pieces coming off the board, and maybe this position is actually not that great for me. Maybe I should have tried to hang on to some pieces. Yeah, I mean the computer thinks it's slightly advantageous for white, not a huge advantage, but definitely some advantage for white. And I guess I agree. It's just the pawn on d5 is a little bit of extra space, but anyway, not a huge deal. Coming through here. Yeah, the computer's saying this is about equal. I mean, maintaining its view of equality here. Yeah, here I decided to play c6, which the computer actually likes, just to attack the pawn and try to open some stuff up. But it's still just an equal position. So now the computer wants to play rook d2, and I just played this move so I can push the pawn forward. Yeah, rook c1.
Check.
It wants to play. Yeah, now it doesn't like this check, saying this is slightly better for me. Knight to d5. Yeah, it didn't like this maneuver with knight to d5. Computer wants to play king g6 here. I played rook b8, but it's not a huge. Well, now it's saying it's almost a one pawn advantage for me. Yeah, rook takes b2, and the problem for him here is that I'm getting to the pawn. So I am up a pawn in this endgame, but these endgames are sort of hard to win. So I just try to get my king over here and keep some pawn mobility with these pawns. The issue is, I thought the issue would be that if I played a move like this, I'm losing a lot of pawn mobility because this pawn is always sort of stopped by this pawn, and there's no opportunity for him to take and free my pawns up a little bit and make them mobile. So the computer says it's not so bad, but it liked more what I did. So yeah, just slowly trying to make some progress in this rook endgame. Yeah, it likes this move h5 here to try to go for the win, and it thinks I'm better here. But at this point, he had almost no time left. So yeah, now it's just this idea is very strong, running in with the king.
Check.
Yeah, now getting the king to here, and now this is just winning. Yeah, it looked winning. So the idea was if he plays check here, then I would go to b2 or here, and then say he makes another waiting move. He has to maintain protection of the pawn, obviously. So say he goes like here. My idea was to do this, and then
check.
This is obviously a winning king and pawn endgame. The king will just step to the side, and the pawn will just run home. So, all right, interesting game. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.